I said to a friend that I was going to write my autobiography, and I said, unlike a lot of autobiographies these days, mine is not going to have any child abuse, lurid sex, or gratuitous foul language. And he said, you'll never sell it. Luckily, he was wrong. It's selling. I was born in 1919, just after the First World War. And I'm very lucky in being able to have very clear memories of my earliest childhood. So that when I came to write the book, I was able to write about what it was like to be a child in the 1920s. We lived in a 3-story with cellars, a semi-detached house which was rented. And my father was earning less than £400 a year. And yet we lived very comfortably. We ate well, we had holidays. My mother made a lot of our clothes. But we had a very pleasant life. Quite early on, there wasn't any radio. And there was certainly no television. Films were silent, black and white. And if you wanted to know what was going on in the world, or even locally, you had to go out and buy a newspaper. People entertained themselves. Everybody could either sing or play an instrument, and my parents used to give musical evenings. They invited friends to supper, and I would drift off to sleep in bed as a child, listening to the old ballads. My father and mother singing, and mother playing her mandolin. She was a very good mandolinist. Quite early on, I became I had one foot on the stage. When I was only just 3, I was asked to play the part of the King of the Land of Nod, a children's production. I didn't have any lines, and it was in the open air. What I had to do was throw a handful of magic dust over the leading lady, who was 12, and she had to say, he doesn't speak, he only smiles. Upon which, having scanned my audience, I said, oh look, there's Daddy. That got a huge laugh, and I enjoyed making people laugh ever since. When I was at school, I loved my preparatory school. I hated it when I went to the high school. When I was about 12, I was writing little plays and coercing my friends into acting them with me. I, of course, always wrote the best part for myself. And I produced the plays, made the costumes, and we played in the garden before an invited audience, and they were playing games too. And the first year, Dr. Bernardo's had 12 shillings and sixpence from us. The following year, we were more ambitious, and we gave them 21 shillings. By the time I was 14, my mother was declining into poor health, and I was hating school. So it was very nice all round that I was able to leave and look after my mother and run the house. At the same time, of course, I continued with my music studies. I was learning the piano, and also with my drama lessons as well. And by the time I was in my late teens, I was writing numerous monologues and performing them as an after-dinner speaker, and that was my first professional work. A book of those monologues was published, and one of them appears at the end of my book. And later still, I was writing rather saucy, odd odes for Cyril Fletcher. And a book of those was also published, and another one of those is at the end of the book. I lost myself. Then came the war, of course. I married in 1942, and my husband almost immediately had to go off to India and Burma, and we didn't see each other for 3 years and 4 months. I did some war work, and then I had the chance to go into the local rep. It was twice nightly, with a new play to learn every week, and I loved it. I really loved the theatre. And at the end of that season, I went into radio. I I was living in the Midlands, so I applied to Birmingham studios, and for my very first broadcast, I arrived quite early, being very young and keen, got up to the studio to find that it was in darkness. So I fiddled around to find a switch, found one, switched it. It wasn't the light switch, it was the fire alarm. All hell broke loose, but at least they knew I had arrived. It was a wonderful time to be in radio then. I was working with all the radio greats, and I played in a very well-known program I'm sure you've heard of, Dick Barton, special agent. I used to be the girl who was locked in a cupboard and rescued at the last moment, or locked in a basement with the water rising. There again, I was rescued just in time. And also, I used to be in Mrs. Dale's Diary. A lot more prestigious programs, which everybody has forgotten, of course. What they remember is Dick Barton and Mrs. Dale's Diary. Eventually, of course, came The Archers. We did just a week's trial in the spring of 1950, and then we didn't hear any more until the autumn. And we were told that we would be given a 3-month contract, and we would start on January the 1st, 1951. And that was 60 years ago. And rather sadly, I'm the only one of the original cast left, and I'm still doing it. When we started, it was a very small program. It was mainly for farmers, but we had some rather sensational stories quite early on. There was the one where Peggy's daughter Jennifer had an illegitimate baby. Well, of course, that's terrible in those days. And I had some rather strange letters from listeners who weren't quite sure which was fact and which was fiction. And I had one which said from a rather righteous lady, "Dear Mrs. Archer, I think you ought to know that your daughter Jennifer is going to have a baby. Only 3 people know, the doctor, the vicar, and your daughter Lillian. Why don't you know? Don't you listen to the program?" There's another story I remember, not to do with the Archers, but to show how our voices were recognised in those days. I was asked with a friend if we would like to go and watch the programme of any questions being broadcast, being recorded. And as we went in, we had to submit a question, which I did, in my married name, which is not June Spencer. And we sat down near the back. And the first thing they did was say, "Will all those whose names we say, please come and sit on the front row?" And mine was one of them. So I said goodbye to my friend and went and sat on the front row. And in due course, I asked my question. A few days later, I had a letter via the BBC which said, "Dear Peggy Archer, what were you doing on any questions? You're not real, are you?" I bobbled. Since then, of course, we've done so many topical programs. We moved with the times, farming has moved on, and morals have moved on, and the things that we wouldn't have dared do early on in the program, we do now and treat sympathetically. My life's been full of laughter, but also there have been some sad things, inevitable. In everybody's lives there are sad things. In my case, my husband developed Alzheimer's, and a short time afterwards, a year later, I was playing the same sort of role in The Archers as the carer of a husband with Alzheimer's. I must say that it has done a tremendous amount of good. I'm now a patron of the Alzheimer's Research Trust, and they tell me that our story has opened up the dreaded disease of Alzheimer's to the public so much more. I'm glad of that. My other great sadness was my dear son, our dear son, who had alcoholism and died of it. But it's all in my book, and one just has to rise above tragedies and carry on. That is what they would want me to do. So I'm doing it.